Hey, how's it going? I just wanted to basically talk a little bit about games today. And yeah, I just thought I'd start with looking at what's currently going around. And I noticed that it's the Witcher 3 anniversary. It's been 10 years since that game came out. It just feels absolutely wild to me that it's been such a long time, as that game has been so massive and influential for what seems like forever. But I wanted to kind of go back and talk a little bit about the games. As I think my experience with those games is a little bit different, and I wanted to let you know, I guess, why I found them like special in their own way. And basically, that's going back to The Witcher One. The Witcher One was quite interesting. Yeah, I just want to talk about it a little bit, see why it's important, and then I'm actually going to go play it to see if it still holds up to what I remember, and whether you could still kind of go play it today, or whether you should just, I don't know, watch me play it or something. So yeah, so I remember when Witcher One was coming out. It was around the time that um, the action in action RPG was kind of making, having a little bit of those first steps to what we know it as today, where it's almost indistinguishable. It's almost like every game is an action RPG these days. But when Witcher 1 came out, Oblivion, which also just released its new remake, the original Oblivion had just come out. And at the same time, like on the other side of the spectrum, like a game called Neverwinter Nights 2 had just come out. And so, like, we were all still figuring out how to make a Western action RPG that could compete with like the action games that were coming out. Um, and at the same time, I guess the rise of CD Projekt Red as they were kind of coming up in their place. I guess I won't go too much into depth of the story of how CD Projekt Red came to be, the guys who made The Witcher. But it's a pretty incredible story. It's quite interesting if you're interested. Maybe read up on it. But back then, I had no idea about any of that. My best friend in high school told me about this game that his big brother was playing called The Witcher. And the one thing that he kept saying to me is that every time his brother plays it, he can just hear like slamming on the desk in the other room because it would just keep breaking uncontrollably and had bugs. And yeah, so The Witcher originally, when it came out, it was kind of notoriously buggy at the time, just due to, I don't know, the nature of game development. Games can have bugs. And then they eventually released enhanced edition anyway, and I'm pretty sure everyone only, their memories are sort of based on the enhanced edition that had it's completely fine today by all standards. But yeah, so the way that I looked at it back then was like, you know what, I'll just play it before the sequel comes out or something like that, because they'll make another one. Sequels were everywhere. Now it takes like 10 years to make a sequel. Then it was like 2 years or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, so I waited for Witcher 2 to come out. And then I went back and played The Witcher 1 so I could then play Witcher 2, because Witcher 2 was extremely hyped back then. So the core of why I find The Witcher interesting and worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of the overall series or the TV show or any of the games, is that it sets up this realistic dark fantasy world that is so important to the identity of The Witcher. Essentially, through it takes that kind of like blend of medieval kind of Polish backdrop and sort of surrounds it with this edge of believable folklore. And in a way, it's almost like you're reading some sort of historical novel on a place that could have really existed, that had, those fables of werewolves, and you're encountering them in real time. It's quite interesting. And then when you get into the gameplay, I used the word medieval before, but I'm going to keep saying it. It's kind of like a medieval survival horror, because Geralt is sort of set up to be like essentially a survivor, where he's just kind of using the most practical means to dispatch people, and doesn't have any super special like superpowers. Like, yeah, he has alchemy, he can see in the dark, he can do all these things, but as well, like, he's facing creatures that basically all those kind of jacked up amounts of alchemy that he's putting in his body are just to give him like a fighting chance to go toe to toe with like a drowner or a werewolf or any of those kind of creatures, especially when it starts to get some of the more insane things that happen in the series where he's just barely hanging on by his teeth. And so he's kind of using that almost military special forces style of sword play that, yes, it kind of looks like a kind of a cool dance and all that kind of stuff. And within that universe, like that makes sense. But I guess as you're playing it, it's almost like he's trying to be efficient in going toe to toe and kind of, chopping monsters up essentially. In the same way, the alchemy is just stuff that he's scrounging in the environment. He's like putting it together in a bottle. He's just like, okay, this will get me through the next fight, and this will allow me to kind of go into the tomb and not die instantly. As you find out that if you don't do that in those games, you will essentially just kind of walk in there and get put through a blender. So you yourself kind of have to get into Geralt's shoes and play as if, you are that kind of survivor, which is interesting. The gameplay itself, like the mechanics, it was at a kind of a turning point, I guess, in RPGs where you can play the game as an isometric point and click, like top down, like Baldur's Gate style game, or Neverwinter Nights style game, or you can play it as like an action game with WASD, or like, left stick style movement. But the thing that it was kind of, I guess, that stuck out at the time was that it had rhythm-based combat. I don't know if you've ever sort of seen that before, but it's essentially you have to like press the button in time with his strikes to complete a combo or to do more damage in a combo. And some people like that. But a lot of people found that really hard to kind of get into. Like, I'm not used to playing like Dance Dance Revolution or Guitar Hero or something like that. I just want to kill things. And like the game that I remember at the time that was doing that in terms of like, oh, I remember this from that game, I can do this automatically, was like Phantasy Star Online. And like, a good handful of people even remember that game exists, let alone played it, even at the time. Even though it's quite, I guess, popular by all, means of looking at games. Anyway, so the gameplay in a nutshell is a bit quirky, I guess, because it came at like that turning point of action being a part of the action RPG formula. So that's one thing about the game that was kind of neat. The other is that like Geralt's character is a little bit special, as that it became kind of the identity of The Witcher, and I'm really interested to see how they make Triss kind of carry on the legacy of why Geralt's character is so important to The Witcher. It sort of carries almost the whole series forward. If Geralt, didn't set up the tone and put everything into context, then The Witcher would be a very different game and it'd be a very different universe. Essentially, he's kind of like I don't know, I had to Google this word, of course, but it's kind of like a pragmatic altruist, which means that he's just kind of taking practical care of others, because he's a survivor. He's been brought up from a very young age to just basically survive just horrific shit just constantly, and so he's trying to go through the world trying to help people survive and survive himself. He's basically doing things to make sure that he is safe and that other people are safe, and he will do sort of any means to achieve that. And it doesn't really mean that he'll do a good thing or he'll do a bad thing in his mind and way forward, or in your mind as you're playing the game. It's just, you're just doing what is necessary to survive. And so it's sort of, there's a specific moment, I guess, that I thought was quite emblematic of this, which was, I remember in the first chapter, essentially, there's a big mystery on like why a town is being sort of like put under threat by the surrounding like area, the monsters, like nature, and everything is trying to come to get it in chapter 1. And I guess I'll see this later, but a witch is implicated in this, and it's very like Salem trials, like Abigail Williams, hunted down, string her up, set her on fire. She's the reason why everything is bad. And so Geralt kind of goes into this, and every single chapter is essentially like a mystery that you're unraveling. And throughout the course of the chapter, you understand that the witch is kind of doing her thing, which has impacts on the world, but she's not directly responsible for what is going on in the end, like once you get down to the bottom of it. But they're still going to kill her. They're still going to execute her because they need to blame someone, and they need to feel like they're in control and that they can save themselves as a collective village or something like that. So as they're about to kind of go and kill her, Geralt steps in and he's just like, look, you know what? This is wrong. And you can, I think you can let her die, or you can step in and save her, and that's kind of your own choice. But if you're sort of playing the character of Geralt, you're going to sort of step in and be like, look, I know the truth. I know what sort of needs to happen to kind of take care of this. And his way of doing that is not by going in there and, you know, convincing them all to have like a moral revelation, or, you know, come to Jesus and realize that what they're doing is wrong. What he does is he understands that these people are never going to basically understand the nature of witches or magic or what she's trying to do. They are incredibly scared, and that they're trying to do what they think will give them a fighting chance to survive through the next winter. And they want to kill her, and there's basically no way around it, but the only way he figures out. And the way he figures out to do that is to basically see if basically he'll just say, look, I'll walk out of here, right? I'll walk out of here. You can do whatever you want. But if I come back and I found her in some sort of grave in the ground, you better hope that you drug that grave big enough to bury the entire village in it, because I'm coming for you, motherfuckers. Essentially, he just threatens to kill the entire village. And he's just like, that's the only way they're going to back off from killing this innocent woman, because they're not going to do it any other way. And that's the only way to make sure that, you know, I don't have to murder a whole village of people right now to get them to stop killing her, or I don't have to let her die. And that's kind of the solution that he figures out. That's not a great thing. That's not like a good thing that he's doing, to be like, you know, I'm going to come and get you all, you know. That's not like the good holy route where you get the good ending in the game. And that sort of sets up the tone for the rest of the game. It's not sort of about like, I guess, black and white thinking, or just like good and evil, which was very prevalent in all those kind of decision-based RPGs. You know, you be the kind of the good guy and you get the good ending, or you be the bad guy and you get the bad ending, right? It's more kind of like, you know, good people can do bad things, and bad people can do good things, and that there's not necessarily such like a good and a bad in the world. It's just things, but you know what I mean. So yeah, the story of the game is quite, I'd say, is probably the thing that's most worth experiencing in The Witcher, because it sets up the world. It gives you an attachment to the rest of the games in the series. It shows you who Geralt is, which, as I mentioned, is like the most important part. But also, what a lot of people don't realize is that it sets up the beginnings of his bond with Trish, which, if you've played the other games, you've watched the TV show, Geralt's bond with Trish is very important for a lot of the kind of the things that happen in the future of the series, and a lot of those decisions that you might be thinking about. And it also has what I guess the kind of the hidden bonus in that game, which is that it has a deep mystery that I don't think is ever necessarily even resolved later in the series. I think it's like a loose thread that they don't end up tying up. But it's still quite interesting, like the end of the game and kind of what's going on in the universe. So overall, I think that would you get into The Witcher 1 just based off hearing me rant about it? I'd say probably just like look into it. If you really like The Witcher series and you just want more, yeah, give it a go. The gameplay, you know, you're not kind of going in there for like the best gameplay ever, but you can smash through it as like, you know, they're not exactly, I mean, no one really cared about like having a super balanced, you know, toe-to-toe experience with that kind of thing. So you can smash through it. It'll probably be extremely hard at the beginning, and then get extremely easy partway through, and you can always set it to easy mode to sort of bypass that and just experience the world And it's going to be a little bit rough in terms of like controlling and making Geralt do a couple of different things. But I remember partway through, I was basically used to it, and you're just kind of going around hacking stuff up and talking to people, which is what you're there for. But yeah, so if any of that was interesting, maybe, yeah, we'll go play it. You can watch me play it on YouTube or Twitch. And yeah, experience it a little bit for yourself. We'll see how it holds up. We'll see how much of what I just said is actually true. And yeah, I guess we'll have some fun doing it. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, let's give it a crack.